Emma Davis, a widow with two young children, Ruby and Liam, was rummaging through the city dump. The afternoon sun was fading, casting long shadows across the mounds of discarded trash. Emma desperately searched for anything edible to take home. Her children played at a safe distance, too innocent to understand their mother's despair at not being able to provide them with a simple meal. Emma, a woman with strong, determined features, carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Widowed at 38, her life had become a daily struggle since losing her husband. "Mama, I'm hungry," complained Ruby, her youngest daughter, tugging gently at Emma's skirt. Emma smiled sadly, assuring her daughter they would find something to eat, though she wasn't sure of it herself. As she sifted through a pile of garbage, Emma's fingers brushed against something surprisingly soft. Pulling it out, she discovered a luxurious carpet, incredibly out of place in this environment. Her heart raced at the thought that such a piece could be worth some money. But what she found next left her breathless. Hidden within the folds of the carpet was a thick envelope filled with banknotes. "That's a lot of money," she murmured to herself, instinctively looking around. The decision about what to do with the discovery weighed on her like a stone. "Mama, what is it?" Liam, her son, approached, curious, seeing his mother's worried expression. Emma quickly hid the envelope. "Nothing, my love, just an old carpet," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Let's take it home. It might be useful." As they prepared to leave the dump, Emma noticed a distant figure watching them. The silhouette was shrouded in the falling twilight, making it difficult to discern any details. The presence of the observer made her heart race, mixing fear with the adrenaline of the discovery. "Mama, who is that person watching us?" Ruby asked, her voice low and tinged with fear. Emma gripped her daughter's hand tighter. "I don't know, dear, but let's go home now," she said, quickening her pace with the children by her side. "Should we tell someone about what we found?" Liam asked, his eyes fixed on the expensive carpet his mother was carrying, trying to read her expression. "We'll decide that at home," Emma replied, her mind spinning with the implications of what the discovery could mean. "For now, we need to keep this between us." They hurried away, the sound of their quickened steps blending with the murmurs of the falling night. The figure watching them remained still, and when Emma looked back one last time, it had disappeared. The uncertainty of that sight left her uneasy, but the need to protect her children and the possible solution to their financial difficulties drove her forward. After discovering the envelope full of money, Emma locked the fragile door of her shack with a growing sense of discomfort. The humble home, made up of worn wooden walls and a roof that barely kept out the rain, seemed even more vulnerable that night. Ruby and Liam watched their mother with sad eyes, still remembering the hunger they had expressed earlier. Before deciding on the next step, Emma improvised a simple meal with some vegetables she had managed to salvage earlier, calming her children's rumbling stomachs. As they ate, the weight of what she had found did not lessen her nervousness. She knew she needed advice and help, but without a phone at home, her only option was to seek help in person. "Mama, will we be okay?" Ruby asked innocently, nibbling on a spoonful of dinner. Emma smiled at her, though her heart was tight with worry. "We will, dear. We just need to be careful," she replied, trying to hide her anxiety. Determined, she wrapped the envelope in an old cloth and told her children she would be back soon. Emma walked through the poorly lit streets of the neighborhood to the small local police station where she knew she could find someone trustworthy. When she arrived, she found Officer Ethan Smith patrolling near the station, as was his custom. Ethan was an old acquaintance who patrolled the neighborhood, always kind and attentive to the community's needs. "Ethan, I need help," Emma said, approaching him with the hidden envelope. "I found this today, and I'm afraid it might bring trouble." Ethan looked at the package seriously. "Let's see what you found," he said, guiding her inside the station, where they could talk more privately. Emma explained the situation as Ethan examined the money. "You did well to bring this here, Emma. This seems to be too large an amount not to be involved in something illegal. I will record this, and we will investigate where it came from." According to the serial numbers on the bills, explained Ethan, already starting to fill out a report. Leaving the money in Ethan's care, Emma felt a momentary relief. He promised to keep everything confidential until more information was discovered. When she arrived at the entrance of her house, Emma's heart was pounding, still unsure if she had made the right choice. As she walked through her simple porch, a piece of paper caught her attention. A small envelope with a note was on the worn table. Emma picked it up and read the handwritten message. "Stay out of this. Forget the money." Her blood ran cold. She looked around but saw no one. Clutching the note in her hand, Emma closed the door of the house, now aware that the situation was more dangerous than she had imagined. The first thing she did was hug her children, promising herself that she would do whatever it took to protect them, even if it meant facing unknown threats. In the following days, the tension around Emma increased. The routine of the shack remained unchanged externally, but internally, everything seemed different. She kept a constant watch, feeling eyes in every shadow. The neighbors, once friendly, now cast curious glances and whispered among themselves when she passed, increasing Emma's sense of isolation. She knew there must be some rumor about what had happened. Probably someone must have seen her go to the police. "Mama, why are people acting strange?" Liam asked one morning as he watched through the kitchen window. Emma, who was preparing a modest breakfast with the money she had made from selling some things she found in the trash, thought deeply before answering her son. "Sometimes people get nervous or scared when they don't understand something, dear. They don't know what happened, but they know something happened." Ruby, hearing the conversation, looked at her mother with her big, worried eyes. "Do they think we did something bad?" "No, my dear, we didn't do anything wrong," Emma assured, fixing Ruby's hair while trying to disguise her own anxiety. As the day went on, the feeling of being watched did not diminish. Emma noticed a black car she didn't recognize driving slowly down the dirt road where she lived. The first time it passed, she thought it was a coincidence. The second time, her heart began to beat faster. When the car passed a third time, briefly stopping in front of her shack before moving on, fear took hold of her. That night, while her children slept, Emma sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling with nervousness. She tried to calm her nerves, but the silence of the house seemed a stark contrast to the whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. It was almost midnight when the sound of an engine breaking the night silence made her get up abruptly. Peeking through the tattered curtain, she saw the same black car parked across the street. The hooded figure got out and began walking toward her house. Emma quickly retreated, her heart pounding erratically. "This can't be a coincidence," she murmured to herself, feeling a mixture of fear and anger. She ran to her children's room, gently waking them. "We need to go to the back of the house," she whispered, guiding them to a hidden place in the house where she kept some tools and old boxes. "Mama, what's happening?" Liam asked, his voice trembling in the dark. "Stay quiet," Emma instructed, her voice firm, though her heart was in turmoil. The minutes dragged on like hours as they waited in the dark. Emma listened to every sound outside, imagining whether the figure would decide to enter. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sound of the engine was heard again, and the car left. Emma let out a sigh of relief, but knew that the night had been more of a warning than an end to their problems. "Let's go back to bed, okay?" she said, trying to return some normalcy to her children's night as she led them back to bed. Emma knew things were far from okay. The visit that night was a clear reminder that danger was still very close, perhaps more than ever. The next morning, after the nighttime incident, Emma had barely slept. As soon as the sun began to light the dusty horizon, she was already up, making coffee in the kitchen. Her mind was still clouded by fear and uncertainty. Ruby and Liam woke up to the smell of coffee and joined her, feeling the tension that still hung in the air. "Mama, are you okay?" Liam asked, noticing the deep circles under Emma's eyes. She forced a smile as she served the coffee. "Yes, my love, just a little tired," she lied, trying to protect the children from her own worries. The day before, she had managed to sell many things, so they had a peaceful breakfast. Emma's dream was to get a good job so her children could eat with dignity. But few wanted to hire a simple woman like her, especially when she didn't have money to buy decent clothes for interviews. She made do with the little she had. After breakfast, there was a knock on the door. Emma felt her heart leap cautiously. She approached and opened the door. There stood Ethan, the police officer, with a grave expression. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, entering. "There have been developments regarding the money you found." She led him to the small kitchen table, and Ethan looked at her seriously before continuing. "We discovered that the money is directly linked to a large financial fraud network. More concerning, we discovered how they knew you found the money." Emma swallowed hard, feeling a knot form in her throat. "How do they know?" she asked, fearing the answer. "A man was watching the dump while you found the carpet. A distant camera caught him leaving the carpet, and shortly after, you finding the object. However, we couldn't identify him in the recording, so we traced the origin of the money and concluded that the person behind it all is Benjamin White, a name you might recognize. He is very influential and dangerous." Emma's mind was spinning. Benjamin White was known in the city, a businessman with a reputation both as a philanthropist and as someone not to be crossed. Some said he was involved with the mafia. Emma had seen the man in the neighborhood before, accompanied by some dangerous men. "What does he want from me?" Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly. "He wants to ensure you don't cooperate with the police. He has a lot to lose if this investigation continues," explained Ethan, looking her directly in the eyes. As soon as Ethan left, a noise outside caught Emma's attention. She peeked through the window and saw a car parking. It wasn't the black car from before, but a more expensive and imposing car. Out came Benjamin White himself, accompanied by two large men who seemed to be there to ensure the mobster's safety. This time, the woman had no way to ignore it. There was no time to flee, so she opened the door, trembling with fear. "Emma, dear, I am Benjamin White. I believe you have heard my name in this town. We are all concerned about you," Benjamin began, his voice as smooth as honey. "We heard about your find, and we are very impressed with your honesty," he said ironically. It was clear from his tone that he detested Emma for turning the money over to the police, as it would lead them to him. Despite the fear she felt, Emma knew she couldn't show anything that could be used against her. "What do you want with me, Benjamin?" Benjamin maintained his focus on Emma. "I just want to ensure there are no misunderstandings. It would be a shame if your cooperation with the police harmed the community. We both know that sometimes it's better to let things be, don't we? And pretend we didn't find anything." Benjamin's gaze was a clear warning, and Emma felt a chill run down her spine. He was here not just to intimidate her, but to do so publicly, showing he didn't fear the consequences of his actions. Even though Emma had reported him to the police, he came to her house. By now, all the neighbors must have seen Benjamin's car at her door. It was a reminder that he didn't fear those who reported him or the police. "I'll think about what you said," Emma managed to say, her voice firmer than she felt. Benjamin smiled again, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Great, that's all I ask." He turned, signaling for his bodyguards to follow as he returned to his car. After the man left, Emma felt the storm was far from over. "I'll solve this," she said, but the words felt more like a question than a statement as she closed the door. She knew the challenge she faced now was greater than she could have ever imagined. In the days following Benjamin White's visit, Emma felt as if she were living under a magnifying glass. The neighbors' stares became heavier, whispers more frequent, and the atmosphere around her house more oppressive. Emma did her best to maintain a normal routine for Ruby and Liam, but the constant fear of retaliation consumed her thoughts every moment. "Mama, people are acting strange again," Liam commented as they returned from a quick trip to the local market. Emma held his hand tightly, squeezing it slightly. "We will be fine. We just need to be strong," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. One day, after arriving home, Emma noticed something strange on the front door. A message was scribbled in red ink, the letters carelessly formed. "Stop talking or pay the price." Emma's heart raced. She looked around, searching for someone who might have been the author of the message, but the streets were eerily quiet. They wanted her to drop the report, probably claiming that she was mistaken and that the money was hers. "Mama, what does this mean?" Ruby asked, her voice trembling with fear. Emma quickly guided her inside, locking the door behind her. "Nothing, dear. It's just someone trying to scare us," she said, trying to appear calm, but her heart was pounding like a drum in her chest. She moved away from the door and went to the public phone near her house and dialed Ethan's number with trembling hands, hoping he would answer quickly. "Ethan, it's Emma. Someone wrote a threat on my door. I'm really scared now," she confessed, her voice almost a whisper. "I'm on my way," Ethan responded without hesitation. "Don't leave the house and keep the doors and windows locked while waiting for me." Emma gathered the children in the living room, trying to distract them with games, but her mind was elsewhere. She jumped at every noise, every shadow passing by the window, her fear growing with each passing minute. Ethan arrived within minutes, knocking urgently on the door. Emma ran to open it, relieved to see his face. "Let me see the message," said Ethan, passing by her to examine the door. His face hardened when he saw the threatening words. "This is getting serious, Emma. I will have to report this and maybe request police surveillance around here." "Will that help?" Emma asked, doubt clear in her voice. "We will do everything we can," Ethan assured, though his voice also carried a note of uncertainty. After Ethan left, Emma sat on the sofa, watching Ruby and Liam play. She felt torn between telling them the whole truth about the danger they were facing and maintaining a facade of normalcy to protect their innocence. On the rainy morning of the next day, Emma heard a noise outside and opened the door to her house. On the ground, at the entrance, was a thick envelope with no address, only Emma's name written on the front. Her heart raced as she quickly looked around before picking up the envelope and taking it inside. Again, the anonymous handwriting and the absence of a sender already suggested that the contents would be more than disturbing. "Mama, did someone knock on the door?" Liam asked, watching her from the living room. "No, dear. It must have been just a wrong delivery, I think," Emma lied, trying to keep her voice steady as she headed to the kitchen to open the envelope in private. She hated lying to her son, but it was necessary to keep him safe. Inside, she found a stack of densely filled documents and photographs. Emma began to flip through the papers, and with each page turned, her expression grew paler. The documents detailed a corruption network, not only linked to Benjamin White, but intertwined with several prominent public figures in the city. There were records of payments, overpriced contracts, and communications implicating a series of illegal activities. Someone had left this to help her with the report. It's much worse than I imagined," Emma whispered to herself, feeling the weight of the truth in her hands. Determined to understand the situation better, Emma spent the entire morning analyzing the documents, absorbing every detail, every implication. The connections went beyond what she could have imagined, reaching the highest spheres of local power. In the afternoon, while Ruby and Liam played in the yard, Emma sat in a chair, contemplating her next steps. She knew that disclosing this information could trigger even more severe consequences, but she also understood that remaining silent could perpetuate the corruption that affected so many lives. It was then that the public phone in front of her house rang, breaking the street silence. Emma ran to it and answered with trembling hands. "Emma Davis," a distorted voice asked from the other end of the line. "Yes, it's me," she replied, caution evident in her voice. "You don't know me, but I know what you received today. It is crucial that you understand the seriousness of the information I sent you. Trust no one," the voice warned, and before Emma could ask more, the call was disconnected. Emma stood there, the phone still in her hand, the warning echoing in her mind. She needed help, but as the anonymous voice had warned, who could she trust? Emma felt increasingly isolated in her fight, with the true extent of the corruption now clearly in front of her, more personal and closer than she could have ever imagined. Upon returning home, the documents remained spread out in front of her, each line a web of connections and corruption that now seemed to suffocate her. "Mama, do you want to play with us?" Ruby called from the door with her innocent voice. "Later, dear," Emma replied, forcing a smile. She got up, locking the documents in a drawer before joining the children. As she watched Ruby and Liam play, the seriousness of her situation became even more palpable. Protecting those two was her priority, But to what extent could she go without compromising their safety? Emma's internal conflict grew. She pondered whether to expose the documents to the police and risk everything or remain safe but complicit in her silence. Each option carried its own weight, its own pain. "Mama, I'm going to Carlos's house to play," Liam shouted from the entrance, breaking Emma's chain of thoughts. "Wait, Liam, I'll go with you," Emma started to say, but he had already left before she could finish the sentence. Emma's heart raced. She ran to the door, calling for him, but Liam was already out of sight. Anxiety consumed her as she considered all the possible consequences of her decision to confront Benjamin White. Hours passed, and Liam did not return. The sky was already tinged with shades of orange and purple when Emma began searching for all his friends in the neighborhood, taking Ruby with her. She started asking everyone if they had seen her son, but no one knew his whereabouts. "Mama, where is Liam?" "He will miss dinner," Ruby asked, worry starting to form in her small eyes. Emma tried to remain calm, but the anguish was evident in her voice. He must be around. "He'll be back soon," she tried to convince herself as much as her daughter. When finally darkness set in and there was still no sign of Liam, panic took hold of Emma. She grabbed the public phone, her hands trembling as she dialed Ethan's number again. "Ethan, it's Emma. My son, Liam, he's missing. He just went to a friend's house, and it's been hours," she stammered, her voice breaking with fear. "I'll send a patrol right now, Emma." "We will find him," Ethan assured firmly. Emma hung up the phone, her heart beating erratically. The idea that Liam's disappearance could be related to her decision to fight corruption filled her with an indescribable terror. She wondered if her pursuit of justice had gone too far, if the price to pay would be higher than she was willing to offer. The night dragged on slowly, and each minute without news of Liam felt like an eternity to Emma. She paced back and forth in the living room, frequently peeking out the window, hoping to see her son running back home. Ruby, feeling the tension, played quietly in the corner, casting worried glances at her mother from time to time. Suddenly, Emma heard the sound of a car approaching her house and went to the door immediately. She recognized Benjamin White's vehicle and trembled. If he had her son, Emma would turn into a viper, ready to strike. "I won't let anyone hurt Liam," she thought. "Where is my son?" She asked Benjamin as soon as he approached close enough to hear her. "Your son, dear? You must be out of your mind," he replied sarcastically. "I came to propose a deal." Benjamin's voice was flat. If you do anything to Liam," she threatened, leaving the sentence hanging, undeterred by the powerful man in front of her. "I can indeed do something to your son. That's why I need you to cooperate. I'll give you a large sum of money to ensure your silence about everything you discovered. You must hand over everything you know. That way you will never hear my name again, and your family will be safe," he said. Emma knew he was lying. She would never be safe after returning Benjamin's money and reporting him. "You have until tomorrow to decide. Otherwise, you will suffer the consequences," he finished, turning his back on Emma. She knew he was neither lying nor exaggerating. Her heart pounded in her chest, her worry for her son growing. Emma would not risk Liam's life, but she knew that making a deal with Benjamin would be futile. Emma was still anxious when she heard police sirens. She ran to the door, fearing something had happened. It was Ethan who got out of a police car, his serious expression bringing a mix of relief and anxiety. "We found him," Ethan said quickly as Emma opened the door. "He's okay. He was playing in a park nearby with his friend and lost track of time." Emma let out a relieved sigh, feeling the weight of the world lift off her shoulders for a moment. "Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for everything." "He's coming." Ethan pointed to the car's interior where Liam was stepping out, hesitant and visibly embarrassed. Liam and a friend had gone to play outside the house, where he had lost track of time, which was why Emma had not found him when she went there. Although Emma had worried about the threats, fearing they had done something to her son, the situation proved to be a simple misunderstanding. Liam was safe and had not been the target of any malicious acts involving his mother and the city's corruption. After a tight hug and many tears, Emma prepared to thank Ethan again, but he interrupted her with a serious gesture. "We need to talk, Emma." Inside, Emma told Ethan about Benjamin's visit and his proposal. However, the policeman was not convinced. "You and I both know that making a deal with Benjamin guarantees nothing in the long run. It's just a purchase of silence, not safety," Ethan replied. Emma pondered deeply, every part of her being struggling with the moral dilemma before her. "I can't accept, not after everything I've seen and know. It would be the same as being an accomplice, but I fear for my children's lives." Ethan nodded, respecting her decision. "I expected you to say that. I'll keep an eye on Liam and Ruby. I'll let all the officers know to keep them safe." After Ethan left, Emma sat on the sofa, watching Ruby and Liam play. She felt a strange peace mixed with fear. She was grateful that Liam was safe, and at the same time, afraid something might happen. She prepared the children for bed, trying to act as if everything was normal. "Couldn't speak, but he asked me to tell you something immediately," Antonio said, his voice carrying a weight that made Emma's heart sink. Without losing a second, Emma arranged for someone to watch the children and ran to the hospital. The white and sterile corridor of the hospital seemed to stretch infinitely as she made her way to the ICU where Ethan was admitted. Entering the room, Emma was confronted with the sight of Ethan motionless in the hospital bed, surrounded by tubes and machines beeping intermittently. Tears flooded her eyes as she saw her friend and ally in that state. Antonio, Ethan's police partner, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. He was attacked from behind, with no chance to defend himself. "It seems they knew exactly when he would be alone," Antonio explained, the barely contained anger in his voice. Emma felt a mix of pain and anger. Why would they do this to him? She asked, though deep down she knew the answer. "They want to intimidate you, Emma. They want you to stop," Antonio said directly, his gaze fixed on hers. The reality of those words hit Emma like a blow. The attack on Ethan was not just a message for him, but a clear warning to her. As she sat beside Ethan's bed, holding his cold hand, Emma pondered what to do with every moment spent beside her injured friend. She felt her determination harden. "They want me to stop and drop the report," she murmured to herself, "but I can't. Not now." Returning home that night, Emma felt the weight of her decision. She knew that continuing to fight could bring even more severe consequences, but the alternative, silence, now seemed impossible. As she opened the door to her house, a sense of desolation washed over her. It was clear that her fight had cost her a lot, and the price could continue to rise. "My God, please protect me. I just wanted to return the money and do the right thing," she prayed, scared. Emma had barely closed the door behind her when she noticed something strange. An envelope carelessly tossed on the doormat. Her name was scribbled on it in grotesque letters. Trembling, Emma picked up the envelope and tore it open with hesitant hands. Inside, she found a single sheet of paper with a message written in bold letters. "This is your last warning." Emma held the paper with trembling hands. The reality of her situation, more palpable than ever with each decision. Each step she took, the shadow of danger lengthened, touching everything and everyone she loved. The weeks following the last warning were marked by a palpable tension that seemed to envelop Emma's house like a thick fog. Every day she reinforced the security of her home, adding more wood to block the door and installing new barricades on the windows. Life inside their home became a series of carefully orchestrated routines to ensure everyone's safety. One cloudy afternoon, while Emma was organizing the documents she had received, an unexpected call broke the apprehensive monotony. It was Antonio, Ethan's partner, with news that made her heart stop for a moment. "Emma, you won't believe it. Ethan woke up and he's talking. He wants to testify, to tell everything he knows about Benjamin White's connections to corruption in the city. You need to testify too." Emma felt a mix of relief and fear. "I'm glad Ethan is better, Antonio, but is it safe after everything that's happened?" "We're taking all precautions. Ethan is under police protection, and we're planning the hearing so that everything is kept secret until the last possible moment. Antonio explained, his voice carrying a firm determination. Emma felt each heartbeat like a hammer in her consciousness. She knew the next few hours would be crucial. As she called Antonio to inform him of the situation, a sense of despair took hold of her, mixed with a fierce determination. She wouldn't let fear define the end of this fight. Ethan had decided to face danger to tell the truth, and she would stand by him, no matter what. The hours that followed Ethan's call were unbearably tense. Emma could barely stay still, pacing the house while waiting for news. Finally, the sun began to brighten the sky, bringing with it the day of the trial that could change everything. Upon arriving at the courthouse, Emma felt everyone's eyes on her. Some looks were sympathetic, others disdainful, and some carried a malicious gleam. Antonio informed her that Ethan was safe, that the police had responded in time to prevent the worst. With that small relief, Emma prepared to enter the courtroom, knowing that now everything was crucial. Ethan was already in the courtroom, looking pale and somewhat fragile, but his determination was palpable. They exchanged a look of complicity and strength before taking their places. The trial began with the prosecutor outlining the web of corruption, citing evidence and calling witnesses who bravely detailed how Benjamin White and his accomplices manipulated contracts and bribed officials. Ethan was one of the key witnesses, and his testimony was both a recounting of the corruption and an act of defiance. Emma observed every face in the courtroom, trying to read their reactions. Benjamin White was present, impeccably dressed, his posture calm, but his eyes were hard and cold. Beside him, his lawyers whispered fervently, taking notes on Ethan's every word. When it was Emma's turn to testify, she walked to the front with firm steps, despite the fear she felt. With each word she spoke, she exposed not only Benjamin's crimes, but also her own vulnerability. During the recess, as Emma returned to her seat, a man she recognized as one of Benjamin's closest associates approached her discreetly. He passed her a note. Emma took it with trembling hands and unfolded it under the table, reading the hastily written words. "This won't end here. Be careful." Emma's blood ran cold. She looked around to see if anyone else had noticed the exchange, but everyone was busy with their own conversations and preparations for the next session. When the trial resumed, Emma felt each word of the threat burning in her mind. She tried to focus on the proceedings, on the lawyer's questions, on the witnesses' answers, but part of her was always alert, always waiting for the next blow. The courtroom was heavy with tension. People murmured, the air thick with anticipation. "This isn't just a case of corruption. It's a matter of justice and humanity," Emma declared, her voice echoing through the attentive silence of the courtroom. "I chose not to remain silent because silence makes us complicit. I chose to fight, not for myself, but for all those who have no voice against this mafia." At the end of her testimony, a respectful silence hung in the air, broken only by the judge calling the next witness. Emma returned to her seat, feeling the weight of her words settle on everyone's shoulders. When the court finally adjourned for the day, Emma stood exhausted but resilient. A crowd gathered outside the courthouse. At the front were supporters of Benjamin White, their faces contorted with anger and disdain. They must have been threatened to be there, holding signs, shouting threatening words, and blocking Emma's exit. The hatred in their eyes was evident and frightening. Emma paused, her heart pounding erratically. Antonio placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "We're not alone in this." Looking around, she saw that some in the courtroom, touched by her testimony, began to join her, forming a human shield. Together, they walked towards the exit, facing the shouts and hostile looks. Back at the refuge of her home, after the confrontation at the courthouse, Emma was relieved to see Ruby and Liam playing quietly on the living room floor. Their innocent laughter was a sharp contrast to the gravity Emma felt after the testimony. She joined them on the floor, trying to find comfort in the normalcy of being a mother, but her mind was restless. "What if I've gone too far?" she wondered, looking at her children. "What if my fight for justice only puts them in greater danger?" Later, as she put them to bed, Emma kissed their foreheads, trying to convey a calm she didn't feel. "Good night, my loves. Everything will be okay," she murmured, more as a promise to herself than than as a guarantee to them. After ensuring they were asleep, Emma sat at the table under the dim light, allowing herself a moment of despair. The fight seemed endless, and for a moment, she pondered the possibility of giving up. Then the public phone rang on the street, cutting through the night's silence like an alarm signal.